You are a woman, but that must never be heard. Your body must smell like roses, or better yet like nothing at all. Your skin must be soft, your breath light, your pain invisible. Even when a river moves inside you, you must smile. You must stir the soup. You must keep your legs closed when it drips. Tonight, we won't talk about kings, or wars, or great discoveries. We will talk about the silence around something that happens every month and still isn't allowed a name. Your days, your blood, the thing they taught you to hide before you even understood what it meant, the thing that made you a woman and then made you ashamed of it. Let's walk slowly, gently into the past, where women bled in silence and history never listened. But tonight, we will. It starts before language, before anyone has told you what it means, before anyone dares to speak the word. But your body, it already knows. You are 13. You sleep in a small bed of straw under a wool blanket that smells of smoke and sun. Your window has no glass, only a shutter. There's wind in the rafters, chickens scratching in the dust outside, and your mother still snoring softly by the hearth, but you wake with a heat between your legs, a strange spreading warmth. You blink, still half asleep, and you feel something heavy in your stomach. A weight, deep and slow. You reach down. Your fingers come back wet. You squint at them. They are dark red, not the bright, clean red of berries or paint, but thick, earthy, almost brown. You don't scream. You sit there, still as stone, because something inside you already understands even if no one ever told you. You are bleeding, and now you are different. You rise from the bed carefully, legs closed. You walk slowly to the chest where your extra skirts are kept. Your feet are bare, the floor cold. Your hands tremble as you pull out the thinnest, oldest one. You fold it, fold it again. Place it in your underclothes between your thighs. It feels rough, like you're sitting on a bundled rope. And no one sees you. You go back to bed and lie stiff as a board, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. In the morning, your mother sees the way you walk. She notices the cloth tucked between your legs. She doesn't smile. She doesn't hug you. She just nods, goes to the shelf, and hands you a bigger rag, one stained with old rust marks. Don't sit on the good chairs, she says. Don't wear your Sunday dress. And don't go outside. You nod. Not because you understand, but because silence has always been the safest answer. At midday, your younger brother asks why you're not helping with the laundry. Your mother says you have a headache. You look down, say nothing. You eat your soup, quietly, holding your knees together, feeling the cloth inside you soak heavier, warmer. No one mentions it. No one asks. Even though every woman in the room knows exactly what is happening, the blood is not a surprise, only the shame. Later, when you go to rinse your cloth by the stream, you hide behind the trees. You wash it quickly with cold water and ashes, scrubbing the fabric like it's sin itself. When it doesn't come clean, you bury the stain under your fingernails. You wring it out, hang it on a branch where no one will see. Then you sit, legs folded, and wait for it to dry. The wind picks up, leaves shift. Birds call in the distance, and somewhere inside you, a slow understanding grows. This will happen again, and again, and again. That night, you ask your mother how long it lasts. She shrugs. A few days, then adds, sometimes more. You ask. If it hurts, she says, you'll get used to it, but you hear what she doesn't say. You hear it in her voice, in the way she avoids your eyes, in the way she reaches for the firewood and not for you. You are not a child anymore. But you are not a woman either. You are somewhere in between. Sore, stained, and invisible. In your dreams that night, you see red flowers blooming between your thighs. They drip down your legs and into the dirt. You try to pluck them, but they grow back. When you wake, your cloth has shifted. The sheet beneath you is damp. You freeze. You feel your chest tighten. You fold the blanket quickly, pull up your skirt, check the damage, a dark patch, no bigger than a coin. You turn the mattress. Hope no one notices, but even if they don't, you will. Because from now on, your body is a secret you must carry alone, and the worst part is, you still don't know the word for it. No one ever says it, not out loud. They call it your time, your days, your little illness, the red moon, the visitor, but never what it is. Never blood, never womb, never power, only silence. You start to notice it a few days in. The scent, not sweet, not fresh, not like herbs or bread or soap, but sharp, metallic, a little sour, like rainwater left in a bucket too long, like old coins in your palm. You pull down your skirt and sniff. Again, it's you. It's coming from between your legs. From the cloth you've changed 3 times today. From the dried stain you couldn't scrub out this morning. From your own skin. You are a girl made of blood and fear. And now you smell. Like it, your mother notices first. She doesn't say it directly. She just hands you a bunch of dried lavender wrapped in a kerchief. Keep it under your apron, she says. You nod. You tuck it in. The scent is strong at first. A flash of purple and summer and soap. But after a few hours, it mixes. Lavender and blood. Flowers and rust. The two do not blend. They fight, and the smell only grows stranger. By the next day, your little brother frowns at you. He sniffs the air and looks around. You walk faster. You sit farther from the fire. You keep your back to the wind, and when you lie in bed that night, you cry without tears. Just the sound low, dry, into the blanket. Because you've learned the word that explains everything. Disgust, it's not what you did. It's what you are now. When you go to market with your mother, you wear your thickest skirt, double wrapped. You lace it tighter. You sprinkle vinegar on your undershirt like she taught you. They say it kills the smell. You walk past the butchers, the fishmongers, the pig pens. No one flinches at those smells. But if a breeze catches you wrong, one wrinkle of the nose, one glance from a man, and it feels like the whole square is staring, you are not even sure if they notice. But your mind spins anyway. You become your own detective, your own accuser, your own prison guard. You are both the scent and the shame. The older women tell stories in whispers. That men can smell it. That animals will follow you. That bread will not rise if you need it while bleeding. That milk will spoil. That flowers will wilt. That fire will hiss. One girl was made to sleep outside. Another bathe in cold water every hour. Another locked in a shed, not for punishment, just for being, just for bleeding. At church, the priest passes you and his nose twitches. Your cheeks go hot. You cross your arms, lower your eyes. You wonder, can he smell it? Does he know? You breathe through your mouth the whole mass. Not because you need to, but because if you can't smell yourself, maybe no one else can either. You stop taking. Communion, your mother says nothing, just watches. You suspect she remembers. You suspect she still does the same. You make your own soap. You gather rosemary and thyme. You mix ash and fat and petals. You scrub your skirts, your rags, your thighs. But the scent always returns, not always loud, but they're under the surface, beneath the perfume, beneath the lie, clinging to your body like a shadow. Some nights, you dream of pulling off your skin, laying it over a branch like a blouse to wear out. You begin to walk differently, smaller steps, thighs pressed tight, arms close to your sides, not from fear of leaking but from fear of being smelled. You do not sit on cushions. You do not laugh too hard. You do not dance when the lute plays. Because movement creates heat, and heat creates scent, and scent betrays you. You carry silence like a second skirt. One day, your sister whispers a trick. Burn rosemary under your bed. It helps. You try it. The smoke rises, green and sweet. For a moment, it's better, but your body is not fooled. It keeps bleeding. And you keep hiding, and the world keeps pretending that your natural rhythm is something filthy to erase. By the end of the week, you change your cloth for the last time. The blood has turned brown. Your stomach has quieted. The air around you is neutral again. You breathe deeply. Nothing stings the nose. You feel clean, but not proud, not empowered, not even relieved, just invisible again, and somehow that feels like a reward. You think perhaps it would be different if you were rich, if you lived in stone walls instead of mud brick, if you wore lace and pearls instead of wool and sweat, if your blood-soaked silk sheets, not straw mattresses, if your shame smelled like perfume, but when you are 17, you are chosen to serve at the estate, a chambermaid, one of the clean ones, as they say, clean hands, quiet steps, loud eyes. You enter through the servant's door, and the castle. It smells no better than home. You expect roses. You find sweat, painted faces, and spoiled meats, powder and mildew, bodies hidden under corsets, rod hidden under wigs. There is a separate bucket for the noblewoman's cloths. Fine linen rags, bleached and folded, changed twice a day, burned after. You are the one who must carry them, wrapped in scented muslin, but warm in your hands. Still damp, you pretend not to notice the color. You breathe through your mouth again. You hold the bundle like it's fragile, not because it is, But because the shame around it makes everything feel breakable, you serve a girl not much older than you. Lady Eleonora, she speaks French when she's bored. She yawns into gloves. That cost more than your entire family earns in a year. She bleeds too, and she hates it? I'm ruined again. She throws her cloth onto the floor, doesn't look at you as you pick it up. Don't tell anyone, as if you might run through the halls announcing to the guards and the gardener, "My lady is bleeding," as if everyone doesn't already know. The maids whisper about her moods, her sudden weeping, her sharp tongue. But they never say the word. They say it's her week. She's cursed again. One calls it the red moon. Another, the devil's touch, but never what it is. Not in English. Not in Latin. Not in prayer. When it's your turn again. When your stomach cramps and the warmth returns, you ask for extra cloth. The head maid frowns. Didn't you just have your turn? You nod. Lie. Say you're helping another girl, because if they knew, they'd put you on the back shift, keep you from the noble halls, call you unclean. And maybe that wouldn't hurt so much if you didn't already believe it. There is a room in the West Wing, a forgotten corridor with no windows, where they keep the wash barrels. It's warm there, private. You hide a pot behind a stack of firewood. You hide cloth there too, rags you cut from an old dress, soft ones, the kind that don't scratch. You go there between duties, lift your skirts, wash yourself in cold water, change, breathe, but always quickly, always glancing over your shoulder. Because if someone catches you, they will ask questions, and in the castle, curiosity is more dangerous than blood. One day, a nobleman visits from another estate. He strolls past the servants. He smells of wine and horsehair and expensive soap. He pauses when he sees you, smiles. His eyes drop. You look away. You are bleeding that day. The cloth inside you is heavy. You feel a stain growing like a secret. He leans in. You smell like iron. You freeze. You forget how to breathe. He walks away, laughing to himself. That night, you scrub yourself with vinegar. You rub mint into your underarms. You stuff lavender into your pockets. You burn the stained cloth in the fireplace even though it was your last clean one. You go without the next morning, and you bleed through your skirt. You ask Lady Eleonora softly, "Does it ever get easier?" She looks at you blankly, then rolls her eyes. It gets more expensive. She opens a box, takes out a satchel of herbs. "This stops it," she says. You take it. Sip the tea she makes. It tastes like bitter roots and cold metal. The blood slows, but so does your mind. You feel foggy, sleepy. Your belly aches in a new way. You don't ask for it again. You go back to rags.to, silence.to, shame. In the winter, a servant girl disappears. They say she bled too much. They say she fainted. They say she wasn't careful. They say she was dirty. In 01 says her name. In 01 hangs a ribbon for her. No one lights a candle, because there is no mourning for girls who vanish with blood between their legs. You wonder if men know, if they've ever touched the rags, smelled the truth, heard the pain behind closed doors, or if they believe, still, that women are clean and soft and quiet by nature. You wonder if they even think about it at all. T the end of the month, your flow ends again. The stain fades. Your body feels lighter. You change the sheets, burn the cloths, sprinkle herbs on the stone floor. Lady Eleonora rings her bell. You bring her tea. She doesn't look up. Everything returns to order. But deep inside, beneath your corset and apron and skin, the next river is already beginning, waiting, rising, unseen. You are warned, never go to church while you bleed. It offends the angels. God sees everything, but no one explains why. No one explains how the same God who made your womb can find it unclean when it does what it was made to do. Still, you obey. T first. It's spring. You are 18 now. Your flow begins again with its usual ache, but it's Sunday. And Lady Eleonora must not walk to Mass alone. So you go. 2 rags layered, a ribbon tied around your waist to hold them in place, fresh rosemary in your sleeves, a whispered prayer, not for mercy, for discretion. The church smells of cold stone and old incense. Candles burn in the alcoves. Smoke curls like unanswered questions. You kneel on the bench. Wood creaks beneath your weight. You cross yourself, lips moving without voice. But your mind, it isn't with the sermon, it's watching, waiting. Every tickle on your thigh, every shift of fabric feels like the moment it might happen. The leak, the fall, the shame. Your knees ache. Your back is stiff, and then warmth. You feel it before you can stop it. A slow spread between your legs. soaking through cloth, through skirt, touching skin. You freeze. Look down. Breathe through your teeth. No one notices. Not yet. The priest is preaching about original sin, about women and the apple, about even her curse. She bled first, he says, and suddenly you are not listening to a sermon. You are on trial. After the prayer, you stand quickly, too quickly. A flash of dizziness. Your body unsteady from loss and fear. You glance down at the bench. A faint, dark spot, no bigger than a coin. But to you it might as well be a trumpet. You swipe it with your sleeve. Pretend to smooth the wood. Pretend you are only tidying. But your hand shakes, not from guilt, from knowing what this world does to girls who bleed where they shouldn't. Back at the estate, the other maids notice your silence. One slips a small root into your hand. Chew it. Stops the flow. It doesn't. It just makes your stomach twist and your mouth taste like ash. That night, you do not sleep. You think about the stain on the bench, about the word unclean echoing through centuries. You remember how, in the old law, a woman was considered impure for 7 days after her bleeding, and anyone who touched her bed was unclean too. You wonder how many holy men ever read that passage with blood on their hands. In the morning, the priest sends word. He wishes to speak with Lady Eleanor, his maid. Your heart falls. You walk slowly, stomach tight. The corridor to the sacristy feels longer than usual. He greets you with a smile that does not touch his eyes. My child, we must speak of modesty. You nod. Some stains were noticed. You freeze on the bench. You want to say it wasn't you, that it was mud, that it was sap from your shoe, but you are a girl in a room with a man who wears robes, and his word becomes truth. So you say, forgive me, Father. He nods. Just be more careful. He hands you a cloth scented with myrrh. God forgives weakness, but he notices too. You nod again, and when you leave, you burn the cloth before even using it, because you do not trust anything that calls your body a weakness. You learn to plan better. You count the days. You avoid Sundays when you can, but it always returns. The tension, the fear, not just of bleeding, but of being seen, being judged, being named. One afternoon, a child asks aloud, why can't women go near the altar? The priest replies, because their blood is not holy. The word stings sharper than cramps. You remember holding Lady Eleanor's cloths like sacred things, folded with care. You remember bleeding in silence for years. You remember washing your hands until your knuckles split, just to be acceptable. And now you're told it means nothing. Worse than nothing. An offense, a danger, a curse. But later that night, you listen to the older women around the fire, shelling beans, telling stories. One says, in the old lands, before the priests, the blood was power. Another nods. They said it kept the earth alive. A third whispers, the moon followed our cycle. Not the other way around. You sit silently, eyes wide, because you realize maybe the shame was planted in you. Maybe it wasn't yours. To begin with, maybe the blood you feared was once a crown. But even if you believed it, you could not say it aloud. Not in this world. Not in that century. Not in that church. So instead, you folded your cloth again. You walked softly. You sat on stone benches. You looked at the altar from afar, and every time you bled, you remembered there is power in what they call unclean, but it will take centuries before anyone dares to say it out loud. The market is noisy, but you've learned to hear the quiet parts. Between the apples being weighed and the chickens squawking in baskets, there are glances, nods, hands brushing beneath counters. Not flirtation, not thievery, but something older, something softer, a secret language between women who bleed. You begin working the onion stall at 16. Your hands smell of dirt and tears. You press coins into calloused palms. And when the ache begins in your belly, you wrap rags under your apron and clench your jaw because no one rests. Not here. Not for pain. Not for shame. You bleed and you sell. You drip and you smile. You learn to move without leaking. To stand still when the wave comes. To press your thighs together just long enough for it to pass. You learn the market rhythm. One day, the fishwife sees you wince. The ache has crept down your legs. Your back feels as though it's splitting in half. She nods once, points to a woven basket behind her. You look. Inside, beneath the layer of leaves, is a bundle of cloth. Thick, folded, still warm. She says nothing. Returns to her heels. You take it, walk behind the tent. Changed. No words. No judgment. Just quiet. Mercy between women who know. There's a girl named Enya. She works at the grain stall. She's only 12, but the older girls already watch her closely. They've seen the way she clutches her stomach, how she sniffs the air around herself, how she pulls her dress tight under her apron. They don't tease. They don't announce. Instead, the butcher's daughter slips her a folded square, soft cotton, washed many times, stitched with tiny red thread at the edge, a mark, a symbol, to show it's for that. Enya's hands shake when she accepts it, but she nods. She knows what it means, and now she is one of them. There is no school, no pamphlet, no sermon, but the women teach each other anyway, through scraps and gestures, through the way a hand reaches for the herbs or folds a skirt over a stain. You learn that marjoram helps with cramps, that if you chew willow bark, the pain eases for a while. You learn not to use cloth with holes, not to rinse rags in the river upstream, not to dry them where the boys can see. You learn how to bleed discreetly, elegantly, almost invisibly, because no one wants to hear about it. But it still happens, every moon, every girl, every age. You see the noble women pass by in carriages, gloved hands, perfumed sleeves. They never carry baskets, never kneel in mud, never stain their gowns in public. But once you see a red spot on the back of a countess's dress, just below the belt, a maid rushes forward with a shawl, wraps it around her. They disappear. You never speak of it. But that night, the market, girls all look at each other a little differently, because even velvet bleeds. There's a woman named Marta. No one knows her age. She sells boiled roots and wild eggs. They say she had 7 children and lost 5. She walks slowly now, but her eyes are bright. She always smells of mint. When a girl bleeds too much, Marta gives her tea. No charge. When a girl faints, Marta rubs vinegar on her wrists and lifts her skirts to help the blood flow properly. When a girl panics because she's late, because her body is swollen, because she knows something has changed, Marta simply holds her hand and says, "We'll figure it out." Marta has no title, no education, but every girl in the market calls her mother, even the ones whose real mothers never taught them a thing. Sometimes you hear men joke about how women are ruled by the moon, about how one drop of blood makes them mad, about how they cry for no reason and complain of pain no one can see. They laugh, and the women keep selling, keep folding, keep bleeding. But that night, the fishwife teaches you to soak the cloth in rosewater and vinegar, so it smells clean, so no one will sniff and snort. It's not a solution, but it helps, and some nights, help is enough. There are cloths passed down from mother to daughter, old, fraying, but soft, and stitched with tiny initials. You think about your own, the ones you hide in the attic, folded carefully, washed at night, hung to dry behind the chimney. They are not beautiful, but they are yours. They know your shape, your rhythm, your silence, and in this loud, loud world that silence feels like friendship. By the time you're 20, you've bled over 400 times. You've stained blankets, benches, undergarments, the hem of a wedding dress once. You've buried cloth in the woods. You've burned it. You've buried shame with it too, and still it returns, like the tide, like time. Like the hidden songs passed between women when the world isn't looking. You do not write it down. You do not speak of it, but you remember every trick, every warning, every gift of folded fabric handed in silence, like a prayer. And now, when you see a girl with flushed cheeks, crossed legs, a stiff walk, you reach into your pocket, take out the square, fold it, still warm, you pass it to her. No words, just a look, a nod, a kind of sisterhood written in blood. You first hear the words from an old woman with hair like wire and eyes like still water. She says it while shelling peas at dusk. Back in the oldest times, we bled together in the red tent. The words hang in the smoke of the hearth. You don't understand, not yet, but something about it sounds safe. You imagine it that night, half asleep under your woolen blanket. A tent made not of linen, but of breath and blood and softness. Inside, no men, no demands, no questions, just warmth, just quiet, just the ache shared between sisters, rising and falling like a tide dot in the world. Bleeding is not a reason to gather. It's a reason to hide. If you stain a chair, you scrub it before dawn. If you leak through your skirt, you burn it. No. One congratulates you on this strange cycle of life. No. One lights a candle. No one makes room, but in the red tent of your mind, there are cushions. There are songs sung low. There are bowls of hunted nuts and pitchers of warm water. A girl presses a damp cloth to your belly. Another braids your hair. No one flinches at the smell, because here the smell is not shame. It is sisterhood, sacrifice, sanctuary. Later, you ask the woman what she meant. She shrugs. Maybe it was a dream, or maybe it was real. She says there were tribes who sent their women into huts during bleeding, not as punishment, but as reverence. Time to rest, time to listen, time to speak only when the body allowed. Some say the women came back wiser, softer, sharpened like blades. In some places, it was different. There are stories of women cast into barns, their food left at the threshold, children not allowed to touch them, men who would not look them in the eye, women who knelt in frozen fields so they wouldn't curse the crops with their presence. You wonder, how did the same blood create both ritual and rejection? How could one people sing to it and another spit at it? A traveling merchant tells you of a country far to the east, where young girls are taken to a sacred room when their bleeding begins, and the elder women anoint their heads with oils. They teach them chants, give them red beads, say, "This is your moon opening." You picture it in your mind, a room full of incense and soft drumming, and you want to believe it. You need to, because your own first time was silence, a rag in the dark, and the word dirty whispered behind your back. In your village, no such tent exists, but something still rises when the moon is full. You feel it in your bones, a stirring. The older women disappear for a few hours longer. The young ones grow quiet. Bread is baked with more salt. Soup is stirred slower. No one says why, but in that silence is an understanding. The body is shifting, and the world must soften with it. One winter, you bleed for 9 days straight. You feel faint. Your mouth tastes like copper. Your feet are cold even by the fire. You take your rags into the woods, dig a hole in the snow, bury them deep. When you return, Marta, the egg seller touches your hand. She says, "You need rest." You shake your head. "There's too much to do." She says, "You need your red tent." And for the first time, you cry in front of someone without apology. That night, they make a space for you. Not a tent, but a corner of the storeroom. Soft hay, blankets, a pot of broth. They don't say it aloud. They don't name it, but one by one, women come and sit beside you. Someone braids your hair. Someone rubs oil into your hands. Someone sings a lullaby meant for no one and everyone, and for the first time, your bleeding feels like a season. Not a shame. You fall asleep with your head in another woman's lap. And in your dream, you are in the red tent again. There is a circle. There is warmth. There is blood, but no hiding. Each woman lifts her cloth like a flag, not to wave, not to warn, but simply to exist, and the earth hums beneath you as if saying, "This is not a curse. This is how life enters the world." You wake before dawn. The aches are still there. The flow has slowed, but not ended. But something has changed. You walk into the cold with your head higher. Not proud, not yet, but no longer pretending that your womb is a wound. You start your chores. You bleed into your rags. You do not flinch at the smell, and when the young girl across the courtyard clutches her belly and winces, you already know what to do. You fold your cloth. You carry it in your apron. You begin to build a red tent in your own quiet way. You were warned, not with violence, not even with anger, but with the hush of certainty, that special tone reserved for truths too old to question. If you milk a cow while bleeding, the milk will curdle. You nodded, because that's what you do. But weeks later, with blood between your legs and a pail in your hand, you milked the cow anyway, and the milk stayed sweet, creamy, warm. No curse, just breakfast. You were told not to touch bread dough. The yeast would die. The bread would fall flat. The whole village would know what you'd done. So for a long time, you didn't. You stood beside your sister, watching her knead, dusting flour like a priestess blessing something holy you were no longer allowed to touch. But one day, alone, you broke the rule. You kneaded slowly. You whispered apologies to the dough, just in case. You tucked it in a cloth. It rose perfectly. Golden, proud, delicious. You almost laughed, but instead, you cried, because you'd believed it. And it had never been true. They said bleeding women made plants wither. That basil would blacken under your fingers. That roses would close their buds in disgust. You tested it. You didn't mean to, but the garden needed tending, and your blood didn't care about myths. You trimmed. You watered. You spoke to the rosemary, the way your mother had taught you. Nothing died. The basil bloomed. The thyme curled sweet at the edges. Even the daisy by the path turned its face to the sun. You told no one, not because you were afraid, but because the silence felt like your own small rebellion. They said animals would smell it. grow violent, follow you into the woods. You remember the first time you went to gather eggs while bleeding. You were terrified. You imagined feathers flying, beaks tearing at your skirt, hens screeching the secret of your body to the sky, but they didn't. One hen sat still, eyes half shut in peace. Another clucked softly, as if to say, "We bleed too." And in that moment, you felt more kinship with a bird than with most men you knew. Some women said fire would hiss if you stood too close. You tried it once, waited until your cloth was soaked, until you felt the fullness of it, the ache behind your knees and in your belly. Then you walked to the hearth. Slowly, you stood right in front of the flame. Leaned in. Nothing. No hiss, no smoke, no whisper of divine disapproval. Just warmth, and in that warmth, you felt something else rise. Something they never warned you about. Power. There were other myths, that if you looked at a mirror, it would crack. That your shadow would shorten. That men would grow impotent in your presence. That your blood, if spilled, could curse a field for 7 years. None of it came true. The mirror stayed whole. Your shadow followed you faithfully. The men, well, they managed just fine. And the fields? They bloomed, with or without your permission. But still you remember how deeply you feared, not the bleeding, not even the pain, but the being caught, the shame, the stories that stacked like stones on the back of every girl you knew. You remember the girl who cried when she killed her family's sourdough starter, not because she did, but because she thought she did, because she was bleeding and someone told her it was her fault. You held her hand. And the next week, you started a new starter together. It lived. You think about all the things that were said, and how none of them were about the truth. No one told you how tired you'd be, how tender your chest might feel, how the world would feel louder, and every word might cut a little deeper. No one told you you'd still have to carry water, knead dough, smile at customers with a cloth between your thighs. No one told you how lonely it could be to do something so ancient, so universal, and have to pretend it wasn't happening, and no one told you how sacred it might feel. Not always, but sometimes. In the quiet, in the dark, with your hand over your stomach and the sky soft with stars. Sometimes it felt like a secret conversation between your body and the moon. Not a punishment, not a flaw, just a rhythm. Older than churches, older than kings, older than the myths themselves. You still carry the warnings, but now you hold them lightly, like dried petals. You tell the younger girls they said Basil would die, and when they laugh, you laugh too, because the joke isn't on them. It's on the silence, the fear, the long years of pretending, and the Basil, it grows wild now, just like you. You were never supposed to say the word, not out loud, not in mixed company, not even when it was happening. So you said everything else instead. The visitor, the time, the curse, that thing, I'm unwell, she's resting, the moon has come. So many words to avoid one, and yet every woman understood, because silence was its own language, and women you learned were fluent in it. Your grandmother called it the red angel, as if to soften the ache with something divine. Your neighbor said her garden had begun, which was ironic because she hated gardening. Another woman simply pressed her fingers to her stomach and made a face. That was enough. You'd nod, and maybe offer her a cloth folded small in your palm. You remember the cloths more than the names. There were stacks of them, hidden in drawers, tucked behind pots, pinned under skirts, always folded just so, not because anyone taught you, but because you knew. Fabric carried memory, absorbed not just blood, but the shame, the secrecy, the small victories. In your home, the cloths were made from old undershirts. Soft cotton worn thin, cut into strips, boiled, hung to dry behind the stove. If your brother asked what they were, your mother said, rags for cleaning. He never questioned it. Why would he? Men never had to look closer. You weren't allowed to wear red when you were bleeding. Someone said it would draw attention, but blue was fine. Brown, grey, colours that made you disappear, which you realised later was the point. Some girls tied ribbons around their waists, not for fashion, but to hold the cloth in place. Some girls wore 2 layers of skirts. Some stitched secret pockets into their aprons. Some folded herbs into the fabric to mask the scent. All inventions, all quiet acts of resistance. Once, at the laundry river, a cloth slipped from your basket. It floated downstream like a crimson sail. You chased it, cheeks burning, heart pounding. You caught it before the boys saw. No one laughed, but one older woman gave you a look, a soft one, not pity, not judgment, recognition. You still think of her. You visited another village once, and there they used wool instead of cotton. rough but absorbent. They dyed it brown so stains wouldn't show. They called it the lining. Not because it lined clothes, but because it lined their days, their pain, their caution. Different cloth. Same silence. You learned to sew earlier than your brothers, because girls needed to repair things. Not just sleeves and socks, but secrets. You stitched pouches. You embroidered tiny marks, so you'd know which cloths were clean. You folded them in bundles of 7 days. 7 rags, a silent calendar written in threads. Sometimes the cloths tore. Too many washes. Too much wringing. You'd patch them. Carefully, not to save the cloth, but to delay the shame. Because if your mother saw you ruin one, she'd ask questions. And you'd have to explain that you bled more this time, or sooner, or longer, and the conversation would become too real. Too close. So you stitched instead. You made it last. In the big house at the edge of the village, the women didn't use cloth at all. They had something else. Soft moss, they said, wrapped in silk or lamb's wool, boiled and perfumed. You didn't know if it was true, but you imagined it often. Moss like a cushion, wool like clouds, and you wondered if it changed anything. The bleeding, the shame, the need to hide. Later, as you got older, you heard the words the men used, crude ones, ugly, jokes that made no sense and still stug. You didn't repeat them, not because they hurt, but because they didn't belong, not in your language. Not in the quiet sister coat of folded linen and herbal tea and knowing glances. You made your own words. In your journal, you wrote, "The sea has returned. The ink runs red today. My body is soft with history. Poetry perhaps, or survival." You didn't share the words, not aloud. But they gave shape to the thing no one wanted named, and sometimes naming is its own kind of healing. When you grew older, you began to pass cloths to others. Not just folded cotton, but the wisdom too, the names, the stories, the myths, and their unraveling. And when a young girl asked, "What do you call it?" you smiled. You handed her a bundle, soft, warm, stitched with tiny thread, and said, "Call it yours." The first time it happens, you don't feel it, not until it's too late. You rise from the wooden bench, feel the air shift behind you, and then the look, the pause, that flicker in another girl's eyes, a single spot, barely the size of a plum, dark, blooming. The stain.it could have been anything. Wine, berry juice, ink, but you know, and she knows. And even without speaking, you both begin the ancient dance of pretending nothing happened. She steps in front of you, blocking view. You tug at your skirt, pull it low. You walk quickly, head down, back burning. You scrub it at the well with soap. That smells like ashes. Not because it works, it never quite does, but because the scent says you've tried. You wring the cloth until your knuckles go white. You slap it against the stone. You don't cry. You tell yourself, this is part of being a woman, but some part of you still wishes for invisibility. Stains are loud, even when no one speaks of them. They ripple. A red mark on a chair. A mark on bed sheets. A shadow on white undergarments hanging too long on the line. Even the wind seems to know. You start using darker skirts, layers, aprons. You fold shawls around your waist, just in case. You carry lemon slices in your pocket because someone once said it helps remove blood. You never checked if it's true. You just need to believe in something. In some villages, they burn stained cloths. Too sacred, they say, or too cursed. Ashes don't gossip. In others, the stains are kept in secret laundry piles and boiled at night so the boys don't see. Your aunt swears by cold water. Your sister swears by salt. Your neighbor says shame is the only thing that sets deeper than blood. You don't disagree. You learn the tricks. Sit on straw, not fabric. Stand during long prayers. Tuck cloth high and tight. Keep your legs still when you feel the warmth spread suddenly, unexpectedly. And if it happens anyway, if a red bloom appears beneath you, claim a nosebleed, a cut, a spill, anything but the truth, because the truth is too raw, too human, too female. You remember once, years later, when a younger girl ran to you, panicked, stained, tears streaking her cheeks. She held up the skirt like it was on fire. "I didn't know it could happen like this," she whispered. You said nothing, just handed her a cloth, helped her change, tied a sash around her waist, and later, when she asked, "Will it always be like this?" you wanted to say no, but you said, "Not always. Sometimes it's worse. Sometimes you forget. Sometimes it teaches you to carry silence like armor." She nodded, and you both went on. Some women wear black skirts every day of the month. just in case. Some stain their sheets deliberately to make the rest seem less shocking. Some learn to read. Their bodies like weather. Cramping means 2 days left. A dull ache means another cloth soon. The heaviness behind your eyes means rest, if the world allows. The world never allows. You think of queens. Did they stain? Did their blood dare touch silk? Did their maids scrub in secret? Hide the ruined linens behind tapestries? Did they pretend to? Or did they bleed into gold-trimmed cloth and call it divine? You'll never know. History doesn't write down stains. It only writes down wars. You try vinegar once. A rumour passed from girl to girl.it works. A little, but the smell lingers. And now your skirt smells like soup. You laugh. For the first time, you laugh at it. The absurdity, the secrecy, the dance of hiding something that happens to half the world. And in that laugh is a crack in the silence. Small, but real. There are women who stitch flowers over their old stains. Embroidery as denial, or maybe as art. You love them for that. Because sometimes all you can do is make something beautiful out of what was once a reason to run. You think of your own cloths, worn, boiled, cleaned, none perfect, but all still here, just like you. He never asked, not because he was cruel, but because he never needed to. The man in your house, your father, your husband, the priest, the boy you sat beside in school, all of them grew up in a world where your pain was considered a mystery, an inconvenience, or worse, a joke. He never had to wake up early to boil stained linens before anyone saw. He never stood over a fire, rubbing fabric with lye and ash, trying to erase the shape your body left behind. He never counted cloths in. The dark, to make sure there were enough for one more day of hiding. He didn't know why you sometimes moved slower on certain days, why your face looked pale, why your voice lowered like a curtain. He didn't notice how you stood longer by the stove because the heat helped the cramping, or how you walked to the garden just to breathe and be alone with a body that wouldn't stop being honest. He never had to plan a whole life around 7 days of bleeding, never packed extra rags just in case, never checked a chair before sitting, never held his breath while walking through town in a light-coloured skirt. He never had to wear shame under his clothes. He thought moody meant dramatic. He thought tired meant lazy. He thought cramps meant you just didn't want to help with the lifting. He didn't understand that your blood was not weakness, but a rhythm your life had to dance around like it or not. He was never taught that your body had seasons, that sometimes the river was calm and sometimes it surged, that sometimes it carried loss, and sometimes it carried life. N01 taught him that blood could be sacred, or that pain could be silent and still holy. You wonder sometimes what the world would look like if men bled. Would schools shut for Men's Week? Would holy books call it divine? Would they wear their stained tunics like war paint? Would there be parades? Would their cloths be silk? Would there be gold-stamped journals to track their flows? Would there be painkillers handed out like candies? Would their blood be worth understanding? You once asked a boy what he knew about menstruation. He blinked, laughed, said, "Isn't that when you're crazy or something?" You didn't argue. You just looked at him, and for the first time, you didn't feel shame-only distance, like he was living in a different country. One without rivers, without weather, without the moon. The kings wrote laws. The priests wrote rules. The men built temples and closed their doors to women who bled. They called you impure, unclean, distracting, and still you cooked their meals. You washed their feet. You bore their children. They built altars. You built lives. There were rooms you weren't allowed in on certain days, not because of smell or fear, but because your body reminded them of what they could not control. The bleeding, the cycles, the softness that would not obey. So they called it dirty and walked away. You think of the boys laughing about leaks in school hallways. You think of the men who joked about women on their time of the month, and you wonder what it must be like to never have your body used as a punchline. To never be called dramatic for surviving discomfort in silence. Still, you don't wish it on them. You don't want them to bleed or to carry shame in small cotton bundles. You just wish they knew, not everything, just enough to see you without confusion, enough to stop laughing, enough to carry silence with you when the world forgets that bleeding does not mean breaking, because you are not broken, you are not cursed, you are not crazy. You are a woman who has learned to endure without applause, who has learned to bleed and still carry water. To ache and still smile. To hide and still survive. Before calendars, before clocks, before the church bells told you when to rise and pray, you looked up and the moon told you everything you needed to know: when to plant, when to rest, when the tides would pull, when your own body would begin. Again, your grandmother never wore a watch. She said her body already knew. She woke with the birds. She gathered herbs by the phase of the moon. And once a month, she would sit quietly in the warm corner of the garden shed, hands folded, eyes soft, and bleed. She called it the red tide. Not with fear, not with shame, but like someone acknowledging the sea. You'd bring her tea. She'd nod. There were no explanations, no warnings, no charts or pamphlets, only rhythm and a soft smile that told you nothing was wrong. You didn't know it then, but ancient women once bled together, under trees, by rivers, in red tents woven with silence and stories. They were not exiled, they gathered to rest, to listen, to braid each other's hair while their bodies sang the same hidden hymn. The moon was a mirror dot I de-waxed. It waned, it disappeared, it returned, just like you. Your body followed it like tide follows gravity. Not perfectly, but closely. You tracked your days not by paper calendars, but by the glow on the water at night. Some called it magic, others called it instinct. You called it just being alive. No apps, no clocks, only the faint pull in your belly as the moon turned full. A knowing, not always welcome, but honest. The older women taught you to keep a moonstone, smooth, cold, white as bone. You held it on the first day of your bleeding, then again on the last. They said it helped balance the flow. You didn't care if it was true. You just liked the ritual, because sometimes ritual is what keeps you from unraveling. You marked time with red beads. 7 for bleeding, 21 for waiting. The bracelet made a soft clicking when you moved. Some thought it was jewelry. You knew it was a calendar worn close to the skin, a secret language that didn't need to be spoken aloud. The men watched the sun, the rise and set, the hours, but you watched the moon, the quiet timekeeper, the cold witness to all the days. The world asked you to be small, and you answered with strength. No one applauded. There was a name once given to women whose bleeding aligned with the full moon : Lanarch. It meant she who carries the moon inside. Priestesses, they said. Healers. Wise women. Not dirty, not hidden, not cursed, but powerful, of course. That was before shame was stitched into the hem of your skirts, before the moon was turned into a symbol of madness instead of memory, before your bleeding was something to deny instead of something to witness. You miss it sometimes. That ancient simplicity, when pain wasn't called weakness, when your body wasn't an embarrassment to be scheduled around, when the moon wasn't just decoration on jewelry boxes or dream catchers, but a calendar, a companion, a reminder that everything in life moves in circles. You look up at it now, still full, still patient, still turning whether anyone looks or not, and you wonder if the world once again followed the moon. Would we stop expecting women to be the same every single day? Would we let them rest? Would we let them ebb? Would we let them simply exist? In rhythm? Perhaps one day the moon will become our clock again, and when your granddaughter bleeds, you'll tell her, you are not broken, you are not cursed, you are just like the ocean, and the moon knows your name. There was no medicine for that kind of pain. No pills, no doctors who cared, no charts with dosage, no warm words from the church, only the ache, low and thick, like someone pulling a rope through your spine. So you turned to the old drawer, the one your mother never spoke of, but always opened on the same day each month. Inside, crumbled leaves, glass jars, cloth pouches with faded string, the scent of soil and smoke and lavender. No labels, only memory. You knew by smell, by texture, by how it made your palms tingle or your tongue sting. This was a woman's medicine, not written, passed hand to hand like a folded secret. Mugwort, bitter, dark green, the herb of the moon, burned under beds, boiled into teas, soaked in cloth and pressed to the belly like warmth remembered. Your grandmother swore by it, said it made the cramps walk away. She never said where they walked it. Yarrow, small and white and strong. It grew wild by the church wall. You weren't supposed to pick it during mass, but you did. Your friend bled too much. You boiled a handful. She drank it with honey and slept for 3 hours without moaning once. You called it magic, but really it was just knowing what the earth had already offered. Raspberry leaf, the gentlest one. Soft and patient, you drank it in a chipped cup every day for a week. Not because it stopped the pain, but because it reminded you were doing something. Sometimes that's enough. There were superstitions too. Tie a red thread around your ankle. Walk barefoot on warm stones. Whisper into the well and let the water take the pain. Sleep with rosemary under your pillow. Keep a salt circle by your bedside. You didn't know if it worked, but it was something to do while waiting for the ache to pass, and there was always heat. The old clay bottle filled with boiled water. Wrapped in a towel. Held tight against the belly like a child needing comfort. You carried it around the house. Sat with it while shelling peas. Laid with it when the world got too bright. It never judged. It never asked you to hurry up. It just was. Pain was never allowed to be important. You were expected to keep stirring the soup, to keep folding the linen, to keep praying. So you made your own rituals, sitting quietly in corners, whispering to plants, marking the calendar, not with dates, but with dried petals taped behind the cupboard door. You learned to move differently, to breathe shallower, to avoid the stares, and if someone asked, you smiled. You said nothing, because explaining it would mean admitting that something inside you was not silent, and silence, you were taught, was safer. The apothecary's drawer was never shown to men, not because it was shameful, but because they would laugh. Or worse, try to fix it with rules. So the drawer stayed yours. You replenished it in summer, hung herbs upside down to dry behind the stove. You wrapped the pouches in waxed cloth. You wrote nothing down, only memory and blood. You passed it too. Your daughter, without ceremony. Just one night, when her eyes were wet and her back arched in pain, you opened the drawer and said, "Smell this. Now drink. It won't go away, but it will soften." She nodded, held the cup with both hands, and in that moment, you remembered your own mother's hand on your back and her mother's hand on hers, and how pain, when shared like this, felt a little less sharp. You still open the drawer every month, even now, when the blood comes slower, lighter, more like memory than storm. You don't need the herbs as much, but you still run your fingers over the little pouches, like rosary beads, or love letters written in leaves. There is no pill for what it means to live in a body that aches in silence and still gets up every morning. But there is tea, and warmth, and ritual, and that sometimes is enough. The first time you noticed it, you were 9, a crumpled handkerchief tucked into your aunt's sleeve scented with rose. She dabbed it at her neck, her wrists, the edge of her smile. You asked why. She whispered, "So no one knows." You didn't understand yet what wasn't supposed to be known. You only knew that the women in your family smelled like violets and vanilla and lavender sachets, and not like themselves. By 12, you understood the body had an odor, and that odor was a sin. They didn't say it outright. They said, "Freshen up. Don't let them smell you. Be clean down there." They passed you soaps wrapped in soft pink paper. They whispered about that area. They said nothing about blood or discharge or that a healthy body has a scent. They only said, "Hide it." There was always a drawer with powders, white, soft, scented like powdered sugar and crushed petals. You used it under your arms, between your thighs, beneath your breasts, anywhere you feared your body might speak too loudly. Your mother gave you a tiny bottle of perfume when you turned 13. She smiled as she handed it over, but her eyes were serious, one drop behind each ear. And never leave the house without it, as if that little vial was a shield against the truth of being a girl. They sold it in shops with names like Whisper and Blush and Silk Secret, tiny sprays promising invisibility. So you bought them, lined them up on your shelf, learned how to layer, mist and powder, wash and wipe, anything but let the world know you were bleeding. You were taught to be a flower, but never a garden, to smell like petals, but never like soil. At tea school, girls whispered about other girls. "She smells weird. I think she's on her period." You laughed too, just to be safe, even though you knew next week it might be you. The tampon wrappers were made to crinkle quietly. The pads came with soft pink wrapping that claimed discreet disposal. Discreet.as. If your blood was a bomb you had to bury in silence. You learned tricks, double wrapping, flushing twice, carrying a sweater to cover the back of your skirt. Just in case, you packed perfume wipes in your pencil case, kept backup underwear in your bag. You lived in fear of the moment someone might say, "What's that smell?" Even though you knew what they meant was you. In history books, you read how women in the 18th century stuffed orange peels into their corsets, how they carried pomanders, hollow balls filled with cloves and resin to mask the natural musk of living. It seemed absurd, until you realized you did the same. Deodorants, body sprays, panty liners that promised 24-hour freshness, pads with perfume, toilet sprays. Rose-scented soap meant only for that area. You were at war with your own biology. And losing.no. One ever told you that men's bodies sweat too, that they smell, that they never apologize for it.no. One ever told you your scent was survival, that the body speaks even when you are silent, that a cycle is not shameful, only cyclical, like the tides, like breathing, like seasons that need no apology. One day, you walked past a boy who smelled like tobacco and warm skin.no. One flinched. No one whispered. They called it masculine. You passed by in clean jeans and floral spray, and someone still said, she smells off. So you learned to shrink.to your shower twice a day, to hold your breath when undressing, to light candles before dates, not because you were dirty, but because you were told to fear being real, and still even with the powder, the wipes, the rituals, the fear your body refused to disappear.it bled. It pulsed. It exhaled.it lived. Despite everything, you dream sometimes of a world where women walk bare through the fields on their first bleeding day, where they smell like rosemary and earth and their own story, where no one tells them to be invisible, only whole, and in that dream, no one asks, what's that smell? Because everyone already knows and they honor it, because it means you are cycling, and cycling means returning, and returning means you are still here, still living, still worthy. The first time you noticed it, you were 9, a crumpled handkerchief tucked into your aunt's sleeve scented with rose. She dabbed it at her neck, her wrists, the edge of her smile. You asked why. She whispered, so no one knows. You didn't understand yet what wasn't supposed to be known. You only knew that the women in your family smelled like violets and vanilla and lavender sachets, and not like themselves. By12, you understood the body had an odor, and that odor was a sin. They didn't say it outright. They said, freshen up, don't let them smell you, be clean down there. They passed you soaps wrapped in soft pink paper. They whispered about that area. They said nothing about blood, or discharge, or that a healthy body has a scent. They only said, hide it. There was always a drawer with powders, white, soft, scented like powdered sugar and crushed petals. You used it under your arms, between your thighs, beneath your breasts, anywhere you feared your body might speak too loudly. Your mother gave you a tiny bottle of perfume when you turned 13. She smiled as she handed it over, but her eyes were serious, one drop behind each ear, and never leave the house without it. As if that little vial was a shield against the truth of being a girl. They sold it in shops with names like Whisper and Blush and Silk Secret, tiny sprays promising invisibility. So you bought them, lined them up on your shelf, learned how to layer, mist and powder, wash and wipe, anything but let the world know you were bleeding. You were taught to be a flower, but never a garden, to smell like petals, but never like soil. At tea school, girls whispered about other girls. She smells weird. I think she's on her period. You laughed too, just to be safe, even though you knew next week it might be you. The tampon wrappers were made to crinkle quietly. The pads came with soft pink wrapping that claimed discreet disposal. Double quotes discreet.as. If your blood was a bomb you had to bury in silence. You learned tricks, double wrapping, flushing twice, carrying a sweater to cover the back of your skirt. Just in case, you packed perfume wipes in your pencil case, kept backup underwear in your bag. You lived in fear of the moment someone might say, what's that smell? Even though you knew what they meant was you. In history books, you read how women in the 18th century stuffed orange peels into their corsets, how they carried pomanders, hollow balls filled with cloves and resin to mask the natural musk of living. It seemed absurd, until you realized you did the same. Deodorants, body sprays, panty liners that promised 24-hour freshness, pads with perfume, toilet sprays, rose-scented soap meant only for that area. You were at war with your own biology. And losing.no. One ever told you that men's bodies sweat too, that they smell, that they never apologize for it.no. One ever told you your scent was survival, that the body speaks even when you are silent, that a cycle is not shameful, only cyclical, like the tides, like breathing, like seasons that need no apology. One day, you walked past a boy who smelled like tobacco and warm skin.no. One flinched. No one whispered. They called it masculine. You passed by in clean jeans and floral spray, and someone still said, she smells off. So you learned to shrink.to your shower twice a day, to hold your breath when undressing, to light candles before dates, not because you were dirty, but because you were told to fear being real, And still, even with the powder, the wipes, the rituals, the fear your body refused to disappear. It bled. It pulsed. It exhaled. It lived. Despite everything, you dream sometimes of a world where women walk bare through the fields on their first bleeding day, where they smell like rosemary and earth and their own story, where no one tells them to be invisible, only whole, and in that dream, no one asks, "What's that smell?" Because everyone already knows and they honor it, because it means you are cycling. And cycling means returning, and returning means you are still here, still living, still worthy. No one warns you that the ending will feel like a betrayal after all the pain, all the hiding, all the crumpled pads and perfumed wipes and whispered apologies. You expect relief when it finally stops, but what you feel is something quieter. Not joy, not sorrow, just emptiness. It begins slowly, like a river that forgets how to flow. 1 month, it's lighter. Then it disappears for 2, then 3, and then a whisper of red like a farewell note on cotton. You hold the pad in your hand and realize you haven't used one in weeks. You check the calendar and count back. Was it April? March? You feel foolish for not knowing, for not remembering the last time your body spoke in blood. You thought you would notice the goodbye, but it slipped out like everything else quietly. Uncelebrated. They call it menopause, as if it's a pause, a waiting room, but it feels more like an exit with no welcome mat. There's no ritual, no rite, no gathering of women to mark the end, only more silence. You search online and find words like dryness, hormonal shifts, mood swings. You don't find grief or a strange, clean quiet that no one prepares you for. You stare at the drawer where you used to keep herbs, pads, hot water bottles, pouches that smelled like summer fields. It's still there, like a shrine. But it feels like visiting a version of yourself that no longer lives here. No one told you that bleeding was a rhythm, and without it, you'd feel offbeat. The ache was a reminder, a calendar, a clock, and now the days pass without punctuation. Without bloom or retreat, just time moving forward like a river you no longer swim in. You are not old, but your body has shifted, and you realize how deeply you were taught to measure your worth in cycles. You believe that your power came only when you were fertile, as if blood was the only sign that you were alive. But now you wake up, and your sheets are clean, your thighs unstained, your belly quiet, and strangely, you miss the storm, the excuse to retreat, to say no, to curl inward. You miss the secret language you shared with other women, the glance across a room, the tampon passed like contraband, the soft words, "Do you need one?" You miss being a part of that hidden rhythm, even if it hurt, and yet a new silence emerges. Not the silence of shame, but the silence of stillness. You begin to notice things you never had time for, the wind in the curtains, the way your body settles into itself, no longer preparing, no longer bracing for the swell. You learn to sleep without counting days, to dress without fear of a stain. You stop carrying the pouch in your purse, and it feels like laying down armor. Some days, you wonder if the blood will come back. A last surge, a final red epilogue, but it doesn't, and that's okay. You think about the girl you used to be, curled on a bathroom floor, crying into a rolled-up towel, wishing to be anyone but herself. You want to reach back and whisper, "It won't always be this loud." One day, your body will go quiet, and you'll miss it, but you'll also breathe easier. You're not lighter, not freer, not broken, just changed, like the moon when it stops shining but still holds the shape of what it once was. The world never taught you how to end this story, so you do it yourself. You pack away the old wrappers, the stained underwear you couldn't throw out, the loose herbal tea that smells like your mother's kitchen. You fold them carefully, not with grief, but with gratitude, because this body, it lived through it. The hiding, the leaking, the shame, the ritual, the strength, and now it gets to rest, and that is not an ending. It's just a softer beginning.